What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Celtics Talk podcast here on the NBC Sports Boston podcast network. And we're closing out this big week looking back at the Celtics 2021-22 season by putting the spotlight on Jayson Tatum. And the biggest guest of all this week, Bradley Beal from the Washington Wizards, drops by to talk about his St. Louis buddy. Before we get to that, I want to just talk about Tatum's year as a whole. You know, heightened expectations. Obviously, last year, he doesn't make all NBA, loses $35 million on his extension, comes back. But the big challenge for him and Jaylen Brown is to go to another level. You know, how do you go from being a all-star level player, all NBA level player, but to being a championship level player, to making your teammates better? And that was Ime's challenge to bring that out of them. But it was also Jayson's challenge to, continue to evolve his game. And would it happen? And at the start of the year, it wasn't immediate. And we're all sitting here saying, can they be those players? Will it work with the two of those players? And then mid-season hits, and ironically, against Bradley Beal and that Wizards team on January 23rd, Jayson Tatum erupts for 51 points and just lights that fuse for his annual second half explosion. And I'm telling you that the next 33 games of his season were some of the most special basketball we've seen in these parts. Like I'm not sure it was on level with Isaiah Thomas's surge and all he did in that 2015-16 season, but it was pretty close. Like Jayson Tatum was special over the second half of the year, and especially in regards to playmaking. Felt like it started right away. He scores that big number against Washington. All of a sudden you can see he's just a little bit more confident against double teams, making teams pay for that attention. But there was another leap, he went up here and then he went up here again. And just really turned into someone who could hurt teams for putting all that attention on him. And that's all that, I shouldn't say we ever wanted, but that's what the toughest step sometimes for special players is. It's figuring out how you go from an elite scorer and someone who can get buckets to legitimately aiding winning by making all the right plays and by being selfless enough to seek out those assists. And it really feels like Jayson Tatum did that, especially over the final 12 weeks of the season, a huge part of why the Celtics were able to turn around their season. But, who wants to hear it from me? Let's check in with Bradley Beal, who takes us back to the St. Louis days, driving around from school and dropping little Jayson Tatum off, but always knowing that special things were ahead, and how much it hurt Bradley Beal not to be able to be out there at the Olympics and finally had that chance to be on the same team as Jayson Tatum. As yet, they still haven't been able to experience that together. Here's our interview with Bradley Beal. All right, Brad, a couple days ago, you said that Jayson Tatum could be the face of the NBA moving forward. What makes you feel that way, that he can be sort of elevate to that level in the NBA?
Just his body of work. We all know what he's capable of doing at his size. It's obviously we know that some of the most elite players in our league are 6'9" and above, and Jayson's right in that category. And just to see his numbers and to see his growth in his first, 4 or 5 years in the league. And I feel like he hasn't even cracked the seal of really realizing how good he can really possibly be, so that's why I see it. Granted, some may sound biased, yeah, sure, whatever. But I've been saying that since he was a kid. Go be the best player to ever touch a basketball. Go do that. You have those intangibles, you have the skill set, right? And you have the size, right? And all that, it's just a matter of just putting it all together and just really dominating it mentally, right? Telling yourself every night that this is my floor. I'm the best player on the floor. And you've seen that, he'll crack that code every now and then, right? But the more he does it, and I think he's starting to get it, I think over these last, I would say at the break, since they've been, they lost 4 games, whatever it was. I think he really starting to really see how he can really manipulate this game, right? We can really be one of those guys, that you fear. So it's, the sky's the limit for him, and it's all up to Jay though.
Yeah, ironically, he started his annual second half surge against you guys, went out and scored 51, do you understand, like, why does he always wait to the second half to go to that other level? And have you seen a different Jayson Tatum over this last, say, 12 weeks in the way that he's playing?
Yeah, I would say from a leadership standpoint, right? Like he took the team on his back, from a standpoint of them always having cause and riffraff in the locker room, or, from the outside looking in of what's wrong with Boston, right? They were new. Everything is fresh. Everything's new, right? They had a new little team, added some guys. They have a new coach, so there were a lot of things that they had to adjust to, just like several other teams in the league. But then I think once that clicked, Jayson realized that he had to lead, right? He's kind of thrusted. Him and Jalen are thrusted in this position of leading a team now, right? You have Marcus there who's been there, who's endured those bumps and bruises and who knows how to lead. But now it's Jayson and Jalen's turn, to kind of endure that, projecting into what they're going to be. So I think Jayson kind of, for me, the difference I see is just his maturity in the game, right? He's more vocalized leading. He's bringing it every single night. And I think that's a testament to being really great. If you can do that every single night and you can make your teammates better, you're checking all the boxes of being a great player.
So take me back to, do you remember your first interaction with Jayson? I know you guys lived like 5 minutes away. Like, What was the first time you guys crossed path? And I've heard you say, like, you knew from an early age that he was going to be special. What was that like?
The first time I ever crossed paths with, I don't really remember. It may have been when he was a baby and we both were kids, and I don't really remember that. But for the most part, my first time seeing him play basketball was, man, he was in grade school. I think he was in elementary, right? And I was going into high school. And I remember watching him at a community college. They were playing in a tournament. He was literally, I feel like he was 6'1" in the 5th grade. Like he was just always the tallest kid, but he played point guard. And then to see how he was handling the ball, he's just this lanky kid. He hasn't really fully grown into his body. And I still don't think he's grown into his body yet. And I think just seeing him at that age, I was like, okay, yeah, he's going to be special. Like he has that intangibles. He kind of reminded me of a young Sean Livingston, right? Sean Livingston kind of grew up in our area when we came up hooping. And that was somebody I kind of admired as well from afar. But just to see Jayson playing point guard and I'm like, that's a little Sean Livingston like esque in his game, right? And ever since then, he just continued to progress and get better and better and better and continue to get taller and taller and taller. And to see his mom push him and his dad push him the way they did, like it was very similar to my parents. Like they would do anything for their kid, right? They were overly protective of him. But the push that they have for him to be successful and to make it work was, you got to credit them like 100%. But I've seen it for a long time. I think a lot of people have seen it for a long time.
He gives you a lot of credit for being that big brother presence and guiding him along. Like, how important was that to you when you recognized how special he can be and to nurture that? Because like, I'm sure there are hundreds of kids on playgrounds across the world that sit there and go, man, we're both going to be in the NBA one day. But like, it's legitimately crazy that you guys made that come to fruition.
It was tough because it wasn't tough for me to do, but it was something I embraced because I didn't have it for me coming up, right? So the guys I looked up to were, David Lee, who went to our school, who was the closest guy from us, but he's still a little older than us, right? So there was a big gap there. Then Darius Miles and Larry Hughes, and they're older, so there was a gap there too. So I didn't necessarily have that big brother figure, so to speak, around all the time, and so when I made it, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be that. Like, I'm going to make sure that our kids in St. Louis know that you can make it. Like, you can do it. Like, I'm a product of it. Like, there's obviously there's guys that came before me that've done it that I've looked up to, and it's like, it's possible, and like, here I have Jayson. Like, there's so many other guys that are up and coming in, especially through our AAU program too. Like, we both played with the St. Louis Eagles. That's the program I took over, and now they're Bradley Beal Elite. But to see everybody that come through our program and see how young we were, and it's like, you can make it. Like, we all come from the same background. We all come from the same struggle one way or another. We all have the same goal. But it sounds cliche. If you work your tail off, you can make it, right? You can really make it happen. And so to see Jayson do it it was it was kind of like it was expected. Like it wasn't like a big surprise to us, but it was cool to see it happening right in front of your eyes.
We've started to see a little bit more of Jayson's personality, like as almost like you said, with the leadership and just sort of embracing that all that comes with being a focal point. But you've seen it behind the scenes. What don't we see with Jayson, or what, is there stuff like as a kid? Was he as quiet as he was as a kid? Was he a chatty kid? Like,
no, he's the same. He's, and it's so funny because I try not to compare him to me as much, but people always do. But we're very similar. Like he's very quiet. Like that's how I was. Like he is very quiet. He keeps himself. He's independent, and he creates his own lane. And I think that's what I loved and admired about him, especially coming up. Right. So when I was kind of the big brother figure, like he would do everything I would do. But it came to a point where he got in college. He was like, okay, I got to get from under this big brother wing and kind of create my own lane. And to see that happen, I was like, okay, yeah, he's ready. Right. He's understanding it. He took the advice I gave him, took the advice his mom gave him, took the advice his dad gave him, and channeled it and ran with it. I always credit his mom and his dad because his support system is awesome. No kid can make it here without a great support system. And to see Jayson have the family he had and his grandma too, and to see how grounded everybody was and a part of his success, that is huge. That is huge. But he's always been quiet. Like there's no surprises about Jayson. I think we're starting to see a little bit more of his emotion in the game. And I think that's what fans want to see. Honestly, that's when they see their best player to play the game, they see their favorite players, they want that emotion. They want to see something that I can mimic for Jayson Tatum to do, or, what's his signature? Like kids embrace that, and that's something I try to remind Jay about is every time you walk in Boston, you walk around the streets, like somebody has a number 0. Like that is crazy to think about and crazy to see, so embrace that, understand that. Every time you step on the floor, you're a kid's dream. You're a kid's favorite player. Like, go be that and more for this league. And he has it. He has it.
Well, have you seen? You mentioned having a signature move or signatures. Have you seen his signature celebration, the kiss of death that he's been given lately? He's blowing kisses. So, how do you feel about that? Are you willing to embrace that JT blowing kisses after like late game daggers?
You know what? I can embrace that, because that's after a dagger, that's all you can do. And as a fan, that's like you just want to, that'll piss you off a little bit. So I like it. I've seen it a few times, but yeah, I think the more he brings out that emotion in the game, I think that'll take his game up even more.
Do you realize how big of a celebrity Deuce is up here? Like,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is he a celebrity back home too? Your kids are close, right?
Listen, it's not about me and Jay. Like it's all about the kids. So Deuce on the sidelines, right? Me mugging people, dapping Jay up, right when he comes out for lineups. Those are moments that you wait for, right? Those are moments the cameras are always capturing. So Deuce is a star of the show. Jayson is cool, but Deuce, we're here for Deuce. Shine a light on.
A couple more and I'll get you out of here. Like, what are your conversations like now when you guys talk? Again, like, are you still able to dispense advice? How much can you push him to keep going and involve? Like, what's it like when you guys talk?
I don't do much because he's his own player. He's his own man now, right? And the advice I do give him is exactly what you just said. Like, just keep going, right? Just keep tapping into another level, right? Just keep pushing. Like, I want him to be the best player ever. Like, and I know he wants that. I know he wants that, or at least be in the conversation. So I obviously I'm buying. I'm going to push him. His mom's going to push him. Everybody's going to push him. Drew's going to, his whole corner is going to push him to be, immaculate and be great, beyond limits. But that's our conversations, man. They're just about life. We're both men, we're both dads. We're both, it's so, we just embrace the journey that we both have, it's always about life, how we can grow. And just enjoying it, man. It's nothing beyond that. Like, there's nothing that I can tell him that he doesn't already know, or that he won't learn, so sky's the limit for him, like I always say.
How crazy is that to say that he could be one of the greatest players ever? And like you honestly, there's no hesitation in your voice.
I call me biased, man, but I can see it. Like, it's He is super talented. And his peer, all of our peers will tell you the same. They'll tell you the same thing. Whenever you play Boston, you know who you're scouting for. You know who the game plan for, you know who you're trying to stop, so there's no surprise. But to see Jayson be in the situation he's in, to be in Boston, to be in a sport town, to be in basketball mecca, essentially, there's no story better written for him, and all he has to do is just embrace the atmosphere that he's been in, which the city loves him, team loves him, organization obviously loves him, and just continue to be all he can be, because everything is right there for you. Everything is in the palm of his hand. Now he just got to continue to put the work in, continue to eclipse those goals he has.
Last thing, how tough was it? I know how much you guys have wanted to be out there together. You got a little glimpse of it at All-Star, but to not be out there on the Olympic team, how much is that as a goal in the future to be out there with him in that Olympic setting and be able to do that?
Oh, that was definitely that was heartbreaking for sure. But it was no one's fault. That's the crazy part, But for me, it was definitely a different feel from an All-Star game, right? You have so many guys, talented guys, who have to sacrifice, their offensive abilities and what they do on the team, for the betterment of the team, and it's tough to do. And at the same time, it's fun because you kind of tap into another side of a player, right? And get to embrace how it is playing with that player. And playing with Jayson is something we've always talked about, we dream about. Like, we've never had that chance. Like, we've never had the opportunity. Even in pickup at times, we're rarely on the same team. Like, we're more or less always competing and going against each other. But to be able to be in that atmosphere and to play, practice with each other, playing a few exhibition games, like it was unbelievable. It was just something like we never would have dreamt of two St. Louis kids from the exact same neighborhood, be at this elite level playing, representing their country. Like, not in a million years, would you dream of. So, to see it happen was awesome. Hopefully, next Olympics, we make it happen, 2024. So, but, it is definitely, I'm excited about it.
Well, I hope again, like, just we haven't get a lot of talks during the COVID era, but like, I know how much you mean and how much your support mattered to Jayson. I appreciate you taking the time to talk about him today.
No doubt. Thanks for having me.
Amazing stuff. It's hard to get NBA players to sit down and talk about someone else for 20 minutes, but you can see the appreciation that Bradley Beal has, that big brother status, but big brother, but also one that says that Jayson Tatum should be the face of the NBA someday. I mean, that's just, it's crazy when we've watched it up close from, perpetually 19-year-old and getting to the Eastern Conference Finals in his rookie season and just the individual development to now the idea that he could be one of the faces of the NBA and the sort of the player that everybody else looks up to, one of the greatest of all time. That will come down to how many banners he hangs above the Garden floor. But that's the challenge ahead as we wait for the Celtics and Nets to tip off in round one of the NBA playoffs, and the chance to go up against Kevin Durant and show that Jayson Tatum can be on that level and win that matchup. And I remember him saying it before the season started. Sometimes you have to go at the players you admire most to get that respect in order to elevate into that conversation. And that's Jayson Tatum's chance here, and the Boston Celtics' chance as they get ready to see just how deep they can surge into these playoffs. All right, that wraps up our week of spotlighting the main pieces from this year's team, but plenty more to come. We're going to preview the series. We're going to have nightly game recaps. We're going to just take you through this whole playoff experience. I need everyone to go like, subscribe, check us out on the YouTube page. We'll catch you next time on the Celtics Talk Podcast.